to piggyback off of that, did you hear that I think Talib, excuse me, had Belly on his podcast, and they were talking about Eminem rapping with veracity on every feature, and they made the statement that Eminem out rapped Nas on EPMD 2 from the KD 2 album. Now I find that very interesting because, you know, in my personal opinion, I think we talked about this when the song dropped. I thought that Eminem's verse was trash. Um, but it's crazy to me that respected lyricists and somebody like a Talib Kweli who put together, I think, one of the dopest albums of the year that it came out with Reflection Eternal, who knows his lyrics. And even when the way he was explaining it, it was almost like he didn't really believe what he was saying. But it's like, why? It's like, listen, it's okay to admit that Eminem's verse is trash. Now, if you go out there and just rama 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 and all that shit, and it sounds like a bunch of words, and it sounds like it's supposed to be dope, and it's not, it's okay to say it's not. And I think that the other part that people always put in is like, Mike, did you hear that he was shouting out all the legends and the greats? That's nice, but it doesn't sound good. But anyway, I think that Nas's verse on EPMD 2 is highly slept on, unfortunately, because of the polarizing enigma in hip hop that we call Marshall Mathers. And it's very sad. Nas's verse is clearly better than that verse. And Eminem didn't out rap anybody on that song. So come on, guys. We gotta stop this, man. Gotta stop this. Just because your verse was 32 bars doesn't mean it's great. Come on, man. What
So,
say you, Coop? Maybe I'm tripping.
no, you're not tripping. Talib's tripping. Like, first of all, I mean, you be tripping because you be taking it too far, but he's
I
tripping.
gotta take it far.
No,
This is
no, no, no.
why I
Hold
gotta
on,
take
hold
it
on.
far.
Come on. I mean, like, who does he belong to that he said that? That's all I want to know. Who do you belong to that made you say that? Who do you belong to that made you say that? You
Well,
belong to somebody. I don't know who it is. I don't know what they slid you. I don't know what they told you. I don't know what game it is they playing. That's just not. Mike, here we go with these misnomers of the truth by media outlets again. And just because it's coming from Talib, I'm not further validating it because Talib said it. You know what I'm saying? I don't care who said it.
we do that a lot. Now, I want
You
to
do that
stop
a
you right
lot. I
there
don't care.
because every time I
Talib,
criticize Eminem for
Talib can sit
my
next to most. Talib and most can sit next together right now and say it together, and I'll look right back and be like, well, both them niggas tripping.
well, listen, Coop. I want to piggyback off of that because that is the first thing people say whenever I criticize Eminem's music
No, no,
based
no.
on
You be
my
tripping too. We're
individual.
not talking about you
No,
right
no,
now.
no. I wanna insert this in because the first thing people will say, well, Rakim said he's the greatest. All right, listen. I respect all of these people and the work that they put in, but just because somebody has their own opinion and they're saying whatever they're saying for why ever they're saying it, I don't care. That doesn't
Mike,
change my ears. That doesn't
Mike,
change my ears that such and such said dude's great. It's not. I'm sorry. I mean,
Mike. Rakim got on stage one time and told Baby, "Thank you for taking the game to the next level." What are we doing?
well, that's an opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like,
That's what I'm saying. Just because somebody famous who's verified in the sport has an opinion doesn't make it a fact. It doesn't. Like it just doesn't. You know what I mean?
Michael Sanders says M's trash, bro. I'm with you, Mike. I mean, I appreciate that.
He's not trash. And the verse isn't trash, Mike. It's the same way it always was. That verse is somewhere in the middle.
Okay. Maybe we've covered this before, but we just talked about Jadakiss and what he
Somewhere in
did
the
in the
middle.
verses. Why is it that no one's even putting Eminem's name out there for verses? Why is that? If he's so great, if he's this and that in the culture or whatever, why isn't he somebody that people are throwing his name around when it comes to a verses? That's for our culture, right? In verses for the culture?
Oh, that is so murky.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
No,
If that's
no,
what it is, and your shit's for the culture like that, why ain't nobody throwing Eminem's name around for verses?
No, Mike, this is one of those points where you're not taking it too far. See, this is one of your valid points where you're not taking it too far. The shit Talib's doing is taking it too far. Mike, saying that his verse is trash, that's taking it too far. Bringing up questions about why his name isn't ringing bells for a versus, oh, these are valid questions.
DeCarlo says there is an agenda to erase Eminem from the culture, and it is sad to see. You know, it's interesting you say that, DeCarlo, because I feel like I feel like there was an opposite thing where there was an agenda to elevate Eminem from the spot that he was at in the culture, and I think what has happened as time has gone on, since people have elevated him so high, then that's what's knocking him down. You know what I'm saying? The fact that he's being elevated higher than he's supposed to be is what's knocking him down. I think if we would have kept his career in perspective, he would be just fine. Uprocks is the platform that Talib has his podcast on, and they are owned by Warner Music Group. So, yeah, you can't talk down on them.
Mike, tell Uprocks, Kick Rocks, and their connection.
I think they were started by the people who started Rockets Records, actually. I think that's Talib's correlation there. And we know that, you know, there is a history with Eminem and Rockets Records, and I believe if Dre wouldn't have come along, Eminem would have been on Rockets Records. You know, they've always had an interest in him.
These dudes got to stop letting these guys trot them out like this.
Miles Cage Jr. says M doesn't have the hits for verses. And that's interesting because he has sold more records than anybody in hip-hop. And we're saying he has no hits?
Mike, that's a valid assertion that's not going too far. Where are his 20 bangers? That's what I'm saying. When you're talking about the whole verses thing and bringing up the catalog, and it's like the records that would get played, it's like, oh, no. Run that. Run tell that.
But you know what? We talk about how classic this album is and that album is. People are saying his catalog is below average. And then where's the classic albums at and why?
Valid.
I'm just
These
saying.
These are the valid things that you are saying.
And I think, DeCarlo, I don't want to say there's an agenda out there, but
the album and the song critiques are more valid than the MC critiques.
Yeah, I'm just kind of clowning as an MC or whatever. Like he can put words together and everything, but at the end of the day, I think we judge people on catalog, right? And we judge people on staying power, and we judge people on, you know, just their versatility altogether. But the catalog is a big thing, and if your catalog doesn't age well, then, you know, I think things need to get put back in perspective a little bit. And I think that's what's happening, DeCarlo. I don't think that there's an agenda to knock Eminem off the map. I think that his catalog just hasn't aged well, and I think that, you know, it's just being exposed a little bit more now because there are more independent outlets that are able to give different opinions. Because when M came out, there was just one or two power structures that were telling you this guy's great, he's one of the best, yada yada. He's had time and efforts to prove us otherwise. I want to see a KD2 from Eminem. Is that too much to ask?
Yeah, I want to see a KD2 from Hove.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We can at least say Hove has given us...
Yeah, that's too fast.
No. We can at least say Jigga has given us American Gangster. He's given us a Blueprint 3. But...
That's not KD2, Mike. That's not the same level.
No, that's fine. But what I'm saying is he's given us efforts. I don't know, man. I think American Gangster and KD2 are very comparable. I think American Gangster and KD2 are very comparable. And I think when you talk about what the Blueprint 3 was able to do as far as hits go, I think that makes it comparable too. But Eminem hasn't really given us anything that we could really debate about since 2002. And that's just a tough sell for somebody who dropped their debut album in 99. So you're telling us that your run was 99 to 02, right? That's hard. That's a hard sell.
I mean, wasn't that about the length of DMX's run, though? And we look at X much differently.
We do. Yeah. And I do think that it's dark and hell is hot.
It's not about the length of time. It's about the impact that you make with the length of time. Because part of X's run, it's like, oh, no. It's dark and hell is hot. Flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood. And you're like, oh, no. Put that up on the board. He ran
Oh,
it for a minute.
definitely. But see, I
Yeah.
think the difference between the two of them, as far as like hip hop goes, DMX changed the color of everything that was going on. Shit was shiny. Everything was
Real
fisheye
happy.
lens. And
Real happy.
and that goes for the guys who were grimy before the shininess. They even got shiny. DMX came and changed all that. I don't feel like there's anything in hip hop per se that Eminem just changed when he came in. So
No,
I
Mike.
think that makes him and X a little bit different in that sense.
No, you're right. Exchange things. It's like Big said on Kicking the Door. Y'all was grimy in the early 90s.
Yeah.
Far behind me. It ain't hard to find me.
I mean,
No, that's what's beef. What's
when
beef.
it's dark and hell is hot drop, it was like it was just a darkness. Like it just changed everything. It even
I told
changed
you,
Jay Z's
I told you,
approach.
Mike, I told you that video in the tunnel. That was everything.
It
Him and his
changed
shirt
Jay
off,
Z's
in the
approach.
cover walls, him and Sheik on stage, the black and white. Yeah.
Because if we want to keep it real, like what Marshall dropped in '99, there was a few people working with Marshall. Like I think what Rick Ross does right now, and you can really tell where the game is by who Rick Ross is working with. Jay was that person in the '90s. You could tell who's popping by who Jay has on his album. He didn't have Eminem on his album until '01. So that stuff in '99, 2000, it was on a radar, but not really a hip hop radar. It was more on a pop radar. So I mean that makes him and X different because when X dropped, and I know it's a Def Jam thing, Jay was like, "We're going on tour together. I
No,
need you on volume 2."
no, Mike. I think some of Eminem's impact, although, so Mike, how many white people do you think were immersed in this culture the way that they are now before Eminem?
Here's what I would have to say to that. I'm gonna answer
Mike,
your question.
Mike, there's
I'm
a
gonna
direct
answer.
correlation outside of a few artists, Mike. If you just look at sales
Mm-hmm.
of hip hop,
And I think that's great. But we would.
Mike, hip hop sales, it spikes overall around the time he steps in. What say you?
Well, I would say, how does that make that different than what we were just talking about with Drake?
No. What I'm saying is that the numbers that Drake does, part of the reason they exist is because Eminem bought a whole nother fan base that wasn't immersed in this culture.
But see, this is my thing, and this is kind of what I have been able to, kind of see from an analytical standpoint, working with Recording in hip hop. Right, I have seen over the years that many of Eminem's hardcore fans aren't really hip hop fans. Some of them were introduced to the game by Eminem and then became hip hop fans, but many of them were just Eminem shady fans. So anything that was around that camp, they know that shit. But anything outside of it, not so much. That's the kind of fandom that he was able to bring in the game. And I'm not saying everybody, but on a large level. But that's what happens when when you bring a large audience. You're not, if they're the person that brought you in the game, a lot of times, and if they don't have a hip hop sound, they're going to be a fan of what you do more so than what the culture does. Because I can see if he was on some real rap shit, but he had a very different sound than other rappers. So you can't expect his fans to gravitate to hip hop as a whole. You know what I mean?
No, but I think some of the influence that you're understating, and so I'm going to just relate it back personally. I listen to everything, but me listening to everything started with listening to Nirvana's Nevermind because it changed my mind. And so because I listened to Nirvana's Nevermind, when my guy Obi and I were in Cali recording music and he's handing me the Beatles, I was able to gravitate towards it more.
Right.
When somebody bought me Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, I was able to gravitate towards it more. And so the impact is more in the gravitation than maybe the direct beeline. Like,
well, with that example,
you're not going to tell me, because how about this? You're not going to tell me that there are people who were fans of Eminem walking in his prime that didn't become fans of a Dr. Dre or a Snoop or an Exhibit.
I don't know if those are
guys
great.
That he was doing, like, Royce. Like, you can't tell me some of those people didn't hear those guys and gravitate to some of those guys too. That's some of the impact and effect.
I'll give you Royce. But I think with the other two guys you mentioned, those were the most crossover hip hop artists ever. I think that for the most part, anybody who was familiar, and that's why it was a perfect door for Eminem to step in.
Yeah,
Anybody who they were already familiar with Dre and Snoop.
Mike, there's a difference between selling 4 and 5 million records and selling 10. You want to know what the difference is? 5 million people.
Let me ask you this. And you said that, Nirvana opened you up to the point where you were able to go listen to the Beatles. Like, what artists that Eminem doesn't work with would his fan base be open to based on listening to him in hip hop?
See, but that's why I go like, so when you look at it, this is what I'm saying. Well, somebody that's an Eminem fan that maybe not, he doesn't even like West Coast gangster rap, might now go listen to the Chronic 2001. They might hear Bitch Please 2 on the Marshall. They might hear Bitch Please 2 on the Marshall Mathers LP and want to hear Exhibit. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, we're talking about anything that's around him, but outside of that,
that's what I'm talking about. The circumference. He brought people into a circumference and maybe got them to listen to things that they weren't normally going to listen to.
I think DMX. Let's just say this.
I'm asking questions. I'm not saying it like I know. I'm asking questions because I think
no. And I'm trying to correlate it with like other hip hop artists, right? So let's say I listen to DMX. I might go back and listen to Scarface if I'm, you know what I'm saying, something like that, and that has nothing to do with X per se. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think it's different when you are listening to people for cosign and collaborations as opposed to their actual styles making you a fan of hip hop. I still feel like if you're listening to everything around Eminem, you're still just an Eminem fan and not really much of a hip hop fan. But, listening to Wu-Tang and then that turning me on to, other lyricists in that area or in that arena, that's different. Or like listening to Naughty and then listening to, somebody else from Jersey. I know that I became a real Jersey hip hop fan with Fugees, Outsiders, Naughty, Redman, all of these guys because Jersey has a certain level of spit game. And I just don't think that the way the fans that he brought, he doesn't really correlate anything that goes on in the culture like that outside of his camp to make somebody a hip hop fan. You know what I mean?
No. He does do that. He did that for somebody that I know that I'm actually still dear friends with to this day. So I have a friend, and we've known each other, I think, since I was 18, he was 19. We've known each other for a long time. Mm-hmm. He comes from, he'll tell you, like kind of jokingly, he comes from a kind of redneckish background. Okay? Mm-hmm. About Eminem, and I remember him telling me this, he had listened to Eminem, and he's like, well, and because me and him had this conversation early, he's like, I can relate to what he's saying. I get it. Like, I know that lifestyle that he's talking about. I have family members living that way. And I'm like, he told me that. I remember when he said this, he's like, but he's not talking about how you live. And he were like, what are the albums that are talking about how you live, Coop? And so I gave him the Purple Tape. I gave him Southern Play Illicit. And I gave him Illmatic. I think I gave him Reasonable Doubt. I gave him something else, but I gave him 5 CDs. And I was like, this is what the culture is about for us. But about Eminem, it made him interested in our story and in the culture. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. And so now he was coming to somebody that he knew was a part of the culture and immersed in the culture and like, hey, Coop, like, what it really sound like, though? It sound like Illmatic. Sound like Southern Play Illicit. Sound like the Purple Tape. Go and take that. Go and take these CDs. Come back. He ended up going to a Nas concert with me at the Tabernacle.
Well, I've heard that. I've heard that side of it too.
He didn't become a fan of the other guys, but when he heard Nas, he's like, "Oh no!" He's like, "I get it." He's like, "You love this guy, and I totally understand. This guy's dope."
But so what did that do
Nas fan enough to go to a show with me?
Well, what did that do for
people up in there?
After him being exposed to those things, what did that do for his fandom when it came to Eminem? Did it put that in perspective for him, or did he hold Eminem super high still?
We didn't talk about it much.
Because I've kind of observed too where there were fans like that, where it's like Eminem brought them into the game, and then they kind of got their eyes open with the other illustrious careers in hip hop, and they're like, well, this. Yeah.
He used to sit in the yo with us. He got to a point he used to sit in the yo with us and critique us. He's like, we're not gonna listen to that. You know what I'm saying? Like he be in the yo with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he just got immersed in the culture for a period of time, just kind of from being around me and us being close. You know what I'm saying?
And I
Like
don't
I
know
was
if it's
in
one of
DC,
those
I was
things. I don't know if it's one of those things like Michael Jordan brought me into basketball. So he's
yeah.
always going to be my favorite basketball player. You know what I'm saying? And I still think he's the greatest anyway, but I'm probably very biased in the fact that he's the person that brought me into the game. And so I don't know if it's like that with Eminem fans. I'm trying to think of who is the rapper that really brought me into hip hop like that. Can you identify the person that like the MC that you heard where you were like, I'm into this shit?
No, Mike, it was Nas and Illmatic. I'm gonna tell you exactly how it happened. When I moved to Charlotte, I think that was around the time like Enter the Wu-Tang had been out.
Yeah.
Strictly for My Niggas by Tupac was out. Midnight Marauders was out. My cousin was a hieroglyphics fan, so he used to play a lot of Casual Fear Itself and Del the Funky Homo Sapien.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike, when he bought Illmatic, and I went and stole the tape one day, I think the 3 songs that I dubbed that made my own tape of was Life's a Bitch, The World Is Yours, and Memory Lane. I heard those 3 records and I immediately went and took his tape, stole his tape, went in the other room and dubbed those 3 songs. And that's when I fell in love with hip hop.
Okay, and when you put it in those perspectives, and you're still very loyal to Nas to this day, mind you. I think Method Man might be the person for me. Like
shadowboxing is what made me want to rap, though. Nas made me want to be part of the culture when I heard Method Man on shadowboxing.
Yeah, man. I mean, he had a few different moments. I think Cream was game changing for me too. Like, but it was him, and I was like, "Yo, man, these guys are dope."
I think Cream was the game changer for my cousin.
Yeah, I mean, I remember hearing Cream, and I remember hearing METHOD, and yeah, when Shadowboxing dropped, and Bring the Pain, obviously, You're All I Need. I was like, man, this dude is dope, man.
Well, you want to know, but here's the thing, I guess, and here's the relatability. For everybody that usually falls in love with hip hop, they fall in love with the person who they relate to the most.
I think Snoop Doggy Dogg is a big one too, man, but he was just so big. You know what I mean?
That's what I mean. It's like, no, I was listening to Snoop, but I wasn't in love with rap. Because, like, here's the thing, the stuff Snoop was talking, I couldn't relate to, but that stuff Nas was saying on Illmatic, no, I immediately could relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, The World Is Yours, Memory Lane. It's like, no. I related. I heard somebody talking with a level of intelligence through rap. I'm like, no, I'm a high intelligent brother from the projects. That was a high intelligent brother that I heard on the mic. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you tend to gravitate towards your likeness or who you'd like to see yourself like the most early on when you become a fan of this. I think like dudes who want to be fly from that era usually gravitate towards Slick Rick and Kane and Rakim because they were fly.
I was 12 years old in '94, so that was back when. Shout out to Jason. Jason and Luke used to come outside with like the boombox. We'd be playing basketball outside, and Jason had all the music. So in '94, what was a heavy rotation was I think Creeping on the Come Up might have been a heavy rotation. Southern Playalistic was a heavy rotation, and so was Ready to Die. I think Biggie dominated '94 in a way where I don't think I heard Illmatic like that.
That's
and
a little bit of
I had to
misnomer,
kind of
but
go back. I had to go back and listen to Illmatic. I think maybe like a year later.
But when you're saying that, Ready to Die came out halfway into the year.
It did. I think Southern Playalistic and Ready to Die kind of just clouded that whole radio airspace in a way where I had seen, It Ain't Hard to Tell on Yo MTV Raps and stuff, but I didn't. I'm 11 or 12, like, so it was like if nobody around me had it, they weren't playing it on the radio. And I think that's one of the things that people don't really understand either. Like, they weren't playing hip hop on the radio for a long time.
No, Mike,
that door didn't really get bust open in Atlanta, at least until like '95.
No, Mike, Southern Playalistic for me was more of a comfort album at first, and even a classic album. I had just left Atlanta. I was missing Atlanta. So when I heard Southern Playalistic, it was like, oh, that's home.
So I really got into Nas it was written. And then I had to kind of go back. Like, You know what I'm saying? So I'm sure that if I would have had a similar experience to you with Nas and Illmatic, it probably would have been Nas like that.
Yeah. I
And,
remember my cousin whose Illmatic tape I stole and made the dub. I remember his older brother stole my tape and came back and was like, he's like, you making blunt tapes now, nigga? What you doing?
and you know the thing is too, man. Like I think we look at Reasonable Doubt, and I guess in hindsight, in a certain way, because in '96 he really wasn't on the radar at least here. I remember feeling it getting played. I remember Can't Knock the Hustle,
So
but
Mike,
we don't
Mike,
really recognize that brilliance of that album until Volume 2 comes out. Like he said, man, gave you prophecy on my first joint. Y'all all lamed out. Didn't really appreciate it till the second one came out.
well, here's the thing about it. Okay, so it was written happen because of people like you. Everything that you just said is why it was written got made the way that it did.
No, you're right.
Illmatic did made again. Everything that you just said is exactly why it happened, because there were people like you that didn't find out about Nas till it was written, and it's like, man, you just missed half of the greatest run